And we're live. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you're dialing in from. Great to see so many joining already. I think we'll give us a couple of minutes before we kick off this afternoon. Just give it a few more minutes for a few more names to join us. Hope everyone's had a great start to their day, start to their morning, wherever you're dialing in from and joining us from today. Big welcome to our panelists today joining us. We'll get started and welcome you all as well very shortly. Welcome to those joining us now. So good to have you with us. Fab. I think we'll get started. Want to make sure we've got as much time as possible together today. So firstly, a massive welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us. Super excited to have you all here. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. We'll be speaking all about prioritizing career development and internal mobility throughout the employee lifecycle. So if that's what you're looking for this afternoon, you're in the right place. You've made it here, so thank you very much. We're excited to welcome an amazing panel of speakers to discuss this topic together today. I'm Alex. I'm one of the People and Culture Partners here at HiBob. Hosting your webinar today, moderating this wonderful panel. I'm looking forward to hearing all of the insights that they've got to share with you. This topic is a big one, especially with everything going on at the moment. I think everything has probably had quite a shift in recent months. So we're massively hoping today, out of today's session, you're going to get a whole bunch of information and insight into how we can make career development a pillar of our employer branding, how we can highlight internal mobility as a way to attract top talent, how HR can play a big role in implementing a growth-oriented culture, some internal mobility and career development best practices, the role that managers play in defining career paths for their employees, and how performance can actually influence employee engagement. So I'd love to take a quick moment at the beginning. Hopefully many of you joining are already familiar with HiBob, but just in case you aren't, I'd love to share a little bit with you about who we are and what we're all up to over at HiBob. So Bob is our people management platform. It's designed for forward-thinking businesses, a system of engagement that's designed to meet the needs of modern, mid-size, and multinational businesses. Bob is enabling companies to automate and scale their HR processes, to develop teams, develop people, and help teams connect with organizations and helping organizations and their employees to grow faster and stronger. So no matter where they're located in the world as well. So Bob, the driver behind Bob, is designing a platform for the way that people work today, which even more so now is globally, remotely, and collaboratively enabling businesses to do that as well. So we're currently a global team. We're all over the place, and we have the privilege of serving over 1,300 customers currently across more than 100 countries. You can see a whole bunch of names here of our amazing customers. So collectively, that means we have over 100,000 employees around the world currently logging in and benefiting from using Bob. And the organizations that are doing that are championing their people and their people processes. So we're massively fortunate to be able to help drive and support these organizations to prioritize their employee happiness by delivering an exceptional employee experience through Bob. And some of the ways that we can do that is through driving that through the HR function. So particularly now, we've seen a massive transformation in the entire world, and HR is in an incredibly fortunate position to lead this strategically, to help their organizations adapt and thrive as remote and hybrid working is really becoming the new normal. We're very familiar with that phrase now, but really, how can we help organizations do that and champion that way of working as well? So through guiding and empowering managers to lead their teams in this way, how can we drive communication and engagement initiatives that enable organizations to build a really strong culture and help HR professionals to come to the table with really strategic insights so that HR leaders can impact the success of their business as well. And we're also very privileged today to partner with JazzHR to bring this webinar to you. So I'm going to hand straight over to Amanda here on our panel today, who's just going to introduce a little bit about JazzHR as well. Amanda, it's good to have you with us.
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you. So I'll keep this short and sweet also, just to let you know who JazzHR is. JazzHR, in two words, is recruitment software. We're an applicant tracking system to help small and medium businesses hire better. We do that through efficiencies and automations. It's worth letting you know on the call that we're fully integrated with the HiBob solution. We love working with HiBob. They're fantastic. Some facts about us: we're award-winning. You don't have to believe me. Google us. We take a lot of pride in that. We help over 8,500 SMBs recruit, and we define SMB as less than 500 folks. So we really specialize in that target market. We've vetted over 75 million candidates over the years. We have over 225 partnerships with folks like background checks and video interviews and assessment providers to help you do the recruitment process well, quickly, efficiently. And we have over 25 plus integrations with job boards to help syndicate that job across the web to get eyeballs on it. And we know that getting eyeballs and applies is so very important right now in the crazy hiring environment that we're in. You can go ahead. So really what we do is we're laser focused on improving hiring performance through technology. In 4 steps to simplify it, we help you get candidates, those eyeballs on the jobs. You need people to see the job ad to apply for it. You get all those applicants in. How do you organize that stack of virtual resumes and virtual applies? We help you do that through organization. We help you get hiring, can help create workflows to advance candidates to the right dispositions quickly and accurately with less room for error, send out offer letters for e-sig, et cetera. Ultimately, we help you get better. We optimize the hiring process, and we also provide reporting to see where you're optimizing your hiring process. There's a recent survey from DocuSign's latest HR Trends report that 48% of HR departments plan to automate at least part of the hiring process this year. This includes employment screening and onboarding processes, among others. So people are spending money on technology to help make it better, because it's crazy out there in the hiring world. So we want to make it easier for you. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so I get to start off the intros. So I'm Amanda Friedl, did that a little backwards, I guess. I'm the VP of Strategy over here at JazzHR. I've been at JazzHR about 2.5 years, but before that, I've been in the HR tech space for over a decade, which is crazy. So I've seen a lot of the trends, a lot of things that we're doing to attract employees, create more retention, et cetera. During that time in HR tech, I've also built out teams, helped enable growth, to empower employees and to empower the organization to continue to do more. So I'm really happy to be here. And now I get to introduce Bryce Weinert.
Hello, I'm happy to be here as well. I'm from a company called TeamBuilding, which focuses on online corporate team building. Before that, I was the operations manager for TeamBuilding's sister company, Museum Hack. And in my role in TeamBuilding, I oversee a fairly large team. I also am part of the kind of the HQ staff of TeamBuilding. So I oversee the strategy for hiring across the company. And this means independent contractors, this means part-time employees, this means senior level director positions, this means kind of mid-level manager positions. So all across, and we're always looking for ways to systematize the hiring process, to make sure we're getting better people, to make sure we're getting those great people and making sure they want to stay, and just making sure that we're serving the needs of the company and the needs of our employees across all levels. Now I'm happy to pass things off to Kevin for his introduction.
Thank you, Bryce. First off, I wanted to just thank Bob and thank JazzHR, Alex and Amanda for having me on the panel today. I'm really interested in hearing about your work, and Bryce, I'm interested in hearing more about your work. My name's Kevin Campbell. I'm the founder of Lifted Leadership, which is a strengths-based coaching and people science practice. Prior to founding Lifted Leadership, I worked as a people scientist for Culture Amp. I also am a recovering management consultant. So I worked for both Gallup and Deloitte. And my personal mission is to help people do what they do best every day. So I help organizations acquire, develop, and retain their most valuable asset, which is their people. And I also help people manage an aspect of their lives that plays a key role in their happiness, which is their work. And I'm going to kick it back over to Alex.
Cool. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Bryce and Amanda as well. It's good to have you all with us. I guess before we dive straight in, a little bit of housekeeping for everyone with us today. You should see on your screen a Q&A box there. So we, together with JazzHR, have put together a bunch of questions that we're going to throw to our panel today. So we'll walk through those together. But you have the Q&A box. Feel free to use it and post your questions as well. And we will dish those out to our panel members today as well. So you'll be able to see the questions as we go through them on your screen there. And you've got the Q&A box, so feel free to use that as well. So with that, I think we'll jump straight into our first question, shall we? So first up, have you highlighted internal mobility in the recruitment process in your organization? Bryce, I'm going to chuck this one straight over to you, throw you in the deep end.
Perfect. I'm happy to take the lead here. Yes, we absolutely highlight internal mobility in the recruitment process. We ask people that dreaded question during their initial interview, what is your 5-year plan? Not because we love to put people on the spot or engage in cliched interview questions, but because we actually care. We want to know where people see themselves in terms of the things they want to be doing at work. Do they want to become managers? Do they want to take up social media? Is there something they want to try that they can align with things that we need to, jobs and positions or growth plans that we need to fulfill in our company? We have uncovered so many secret talents with this question and have been able to match people up with tasks or positions as they grow with us that kind of take advantage of those secret talents, those hidden talents, and kind of let people shape positions into something that they're really excited about and help them grow within the company. We always want to know what people want to do, where they want to grow, and how we can help them with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, I think, isn't it? Even if it is a dreaded interview question, it's actually something that candidates really care about now. They want to see how they can develop and grow in the business as well. So it's amazing that you champion this too. I love that. Kevin, was there anything from your side on that one?
Yeah, I love what you said about shaping the position. You know, I think I've had a sea change in my perspective as it relates to job and career fulfillment. I used to believe that great jobs and great careers were found or discovered. But I'm starting to realize, based upon the research and my experience with coaching people, that great positions are shaped the way that you said that, right? It's you find a good opportunity and you shape it into an excellent one. And I think that's it's a very simple change, but I think it's really profound in practice when you can figure out how to enable that within an organization or even within an individual's career journey.
That's completely true, Kevin. And that's a great way to phrase it, that great careers are shaped and not just found.
Yeah, and I think it puts a little bit of the onus on the employee as well, and maybe that employee's manager to have a conversation and an ongoing iterative process of structuring what that career looks like. It's not just a one and done thing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, question number 2 for you. Why is it essential to highlight internal mobility as a way to attract top talent? Amanda, let's start with you on this one, shall we?
Well, I certainly do think it's essential. Even, I talked a little bit about how hiring is so hard right now, but even before that, reality is that, to use a cliche of hiring, A team players, right? Those folks are folks who want to grow with the company. They want to continue to excel. Maybe it's turning into leaders, bigger contributions to the company. Seeing how their work contributes to the company as a whole is really rewarding. And I know a lot of people look for that. So when you're competing for talent out there, you probably want those A players. So to highlight in the job ad, in the initial phone screen, et cetera, that there's a chance to grow within this company is really going to attract the right people. And then it also helps facilitate a culture across the organization of bringing in people who want to grow. I had one of my early mentors, she said, I hire people smarter than me, and I'm not afraid of that. And that always rings back to me, because as a manager, you should want to enable people to grow, to show to grow with the team and just to bring more out of it. So I think it's so important both for the candidate and for the organization to highlight internal mobility to get the top people in those seats.
Absolutely. If I can jump in here, we're finding that as we hire people, the top talent, the really great people, they're not just looking for a job, any job. They're looking for places to work where they like the culture or they believe in the mission or the product, and they want to be invested in the workplace. And by giving them an opportunity to grow with that workplace, maybe explore new things, take a branching path in their career with a company, really, and by being straightforward with that from the beginning, really gets those top tier people invested in you as you are becoming invested in them.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with that. Just a little skin in the game and to see the results is so huge for employee morale and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. On to question 3 for you all. How have you incorporated career development into your employer branding?
Yeah, I've seen this done in a couple of different ways. And, I love what Amanda said about highlighting it in the job ad. I think it would be just a great experiment just to go to LinkedIn or go to Indeed and pull up some job ads that are out there and see how few of them actually talk about development and internal mobility. So there was some research from a few years back where Gallup had asked people that were on the job market what was most important to them when looking to take a new job. And they asked questions around, is it the company's brand and reputation? Is it increased income? Is it stability and job security, work-life balance, or the ability to do what I do best? And if you look at the job ads that are out there, the overwhelming majority of them are going to talk about things like the company's brand and reputation, but only about a third of people mention that as being important when, or at least the most important thing, or one of the most important things when they're looking to take a new job. The overwhelming majority, 60%, talked about the ability to do what I do best every day. That was the number one. And that came in higher than people who mentioned working for a cool company, having more money, having job security, or even their own work-life balance. Because people want to self-actualize, they want to be competent, they want to be masterful in what they do. And if you highlight that you're the kind of company where you're going to match their talents with the needs of the organization and the opportunity to be able to bring those to bear, regardless of what your job title is, or regardless of what job title you get hired into, you're going to have your pick of top talent. Because that's what people really want, and what really motivates people beyond all of these extrinsic things that organizations have a tendency to dangle in front of people.
Absolutely. So for a real life example, I have on my team kind of the frontline creative facilitators that are the face of team building. And we were looking for a project manager to somebody to do more of the make sure deadlines are hit, make sure new ideas are being addressed, working with clients to create new customized content. And it made sense to me and to the company as a whole to grab somebody who was already so good at the face-to-face client-facing role and had that experience and knew what that was part of, and move them into the project manager role. They got to learn new skills, but they also knew exactly how the things they would be doing in this new role would be affecting their former peers. So we had somebody who was a perfect fit for the role, excited about growth, and they're learning great new skills that they can apply wherever the future takes them.
Yeah, I feel like so many people are unutilized. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to share a similar example over here at JazzHR. We consistently promote our customer success managers. They know the product so well. The customers like them already. We have former CSMs in marketing, in partnerships, in sales. We have them across the board, and it's worked out incredibly well.
People do really well in those like upper level jobs when they know the product, when they know what they're talking about. So like intrinsically.
That's such an interesting stat as well. Kevin, you mentioned at the beginning there, like such good insight as well for organizations to be able to tap into that. That's actually what people are looking for. They want to actively see that in jobs that they're applying for as well. And it has such an impact, doesn't it? If you're able to have the internal mobility, even that in itself, employee growth stories where they've moved internally in the company actually can even then act as enabling you to attract new talent. You have these stories of people that have progressed in the company as well.
It's a great point. I mean, when you look at the career page of the website, does it list all of the industry awards, or does it list the person that started off in customer success, or not even customer success, maybe customer support, and then moved to customer success, and now they have a completely different job where they're loving it and doing well? Because that's ultimately what's going to matter more to people than your industry awards.
We actually have a question come through the Q&A, and I think we could save it till the end, but I think it would actually slot in quite well now. If any of you would like to tackle this one, how would you create a plan for career development in the startup phase of the company, specifically for a small business?
I can take a stab at this. So JazzHR, just until recently, was technically a startup. And I had a lot of questions on that when I was interviewing folks. And I think the answer there is, it is hard to say there's a career development track when you have 15 employees and they all have very defined roles, especially in a startup. There's not a lot of room and there's not a defined career path. However, the idea of a startup is to continue to grow customers and therefore continue to grow the employee size. So I think it would be rather not defining a career track, but define that we will prioritize growing from within and want to make sure that you can almost define your own career path. If you see that there's an opportunity to do more in marketing, like CS folks did at JazzHR, and reinforce that you're open to that. Because again, a small company is not going to have a career track that a 1,000 person company is. So it is difficult, but I think it's more the prerogative and the culture that we want you to grow with the company as we grow.
Yeah, definitely. I think that actually leads so nicely onto our next question as well. For you all, how can HR leaders implement a growth-oriented culture within their organization? Kevin, how about we hand this one over to you?
Yeah, and I think that really does fit in well, especially to dovetail off of what Amanda said about, in a startup organization, there aren't as many career tracks or available opportunities necessarily, but you're often wearing a lot of different hats. So it's not necessarily the place to define that career path, but maybe to discover that career path. Because in an HR role, for example, there isn't an OD department and a selection department and talent acquisition. You might be wearing all of those hats as the first HR hire. And you get the opportunity, if you haven't had experiences in all of those different roles, to be very intentional about figuring out which one of those do you really like and really light you up. So being intentional about even setting that up as a discovery path or a discovery plan that can then eventually move into a career plan. In terms of the broader question, I think one of the best ways is to incorporate growth orientation into your performance reviews. And by growth orientation, I mean having it be achievement oriented, but also developmental. So making it so that part of that review is doing a root cause analysis of some of the successes that person's had. The same way that an engineer might do a root cause analysis of a failure, but figure out what are the key accomplishments and achievements that person has had over that timeline, and figuring out what were the elements that went in to enabling that success. What were the tasks that they were doing? Who were the people they were working with? What was the setting that they were working in that made that come alive? But then incorporating also that developmental component and making that development not about going from an area of weakness to an area of mediocrity. It's not about going from bad to okay or bad to good, but it's about going from good to great. Because you can give somebody feedback around something and have the same activity or action or instruction that you want to impart into them, but change the framing, and it can be so much more motivational and growth-oriented just by changing the framing. To say, hey, what you did is just fine, but I think you're capable of so much more, and really encouraging people to discover the upper limit of what they're capable of and discover whether or not that upper limit even exists. So not saying, if you can think about it from like a customer success point of view, right? Okay, during that quarterly business review with the customer, you failed to ask these questions, right? You could say that, and that could feel very deficit driven. But if you say, hey, you did excellent in that quarterly business review, what I've seen the very best do is ask these specific questions. It's the same instruction, it's the same action, but the framing of it is much more growth oriented and encourages people to really want to improve the way that they perform.
Oh, I really love that. It's so much more about how you're actually communicating it and positioning that to enable someone to grow as well and think slightly differently. I think, Amanda, anything from your side on that one?
No, I think he was spot on. Positive reinforcement or positive guidance. Again, just promoting from within, helping create career paths. I kind of answered this on the question that came in through the chat. Just if you started from the beginning that you want success of your employees and you keep reinforcing that, it's going to help improve that culture.
Yeah, for sure. Our next question up here which I think we're starting to touch on perfectly. So why is it important to have an employee self-assess their performance and progress before a performance review?
I'll jump in here. So as one can imagine from a company called TeamBuilding, we're a little fluffy. We're a little soft and fluffy. So we have a all the time company culture called feedback first. We have a hashtag and everything. And the point of it is to get people to self-assess, to think critically about their performance, not just in front of a performance review, but all the time. And the managers in the company also have a feedback first, never failure, that every opportunity for feedback is an opportunity for growth and for learning. And by encouraging that company culture, it means that people don't get nervous at performance reviews. People don't get as nervous when they're talking to managers about situations, about performance, that it becomes more of an open conversation and a continual place for growth. So we have all the time conversations about assessing and about assessment, and then those become larger conversations and big picture conversations around performance reviews. So this isn't just important at a performance review. I think it's really, really, really important all the time. So some of the specific ways that we do this is when a performance issue comes up, or when there's a question or there's a big picture to talk about, I never start the conversation. I always ask that open-ended question. Here's the situation. What do you think happened? What is your interpretation? And often people are so much harsher on themselves when reacting to a situation than I would ever be to them. So then I can give my feedback. We can find a place in the middle, and we can talk about the growth and learning opportunities that arise.
I love self-assessments, and it's interesting because we do weekly self-assessments. We have a quick check-in. It takes about 5 minutes to do, but like, how did your week go? And it really helps as a manager to be able to see the pulse of your team. It also helps to be able to look back on weekly check-ins when it is time to do the big performance reviews annually. But I think self-assessments, and probably most of us on the phone have had to do a self-assessment. And as Bryce says, you tend to be pretty critical of your own performance. So it is interesting to see the self-assessment and then compare it. And I don't look at the employee's self-assessment until I've done the assessment, and then I compare it, because it's interesting to see what is the same and what is different and who is more critical of different things. So I think enabling the employee or having the employee do a self-assessment makes them look inward to be critical of their job. And I mean that in a good way too, like, where could I be better? And carving out time to think about how you're doing your job. Frankly, sometimes we just don't make time to do that. So I think it is very important to have employees reflect on their day-to-day.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm smiling because I can speak to this as well. We've just completed a cycle here at Bob. We've branded it our high growth, everything needs a Bob theme. And we had exactly this. And one of the, I guess, kind of goals for us was actually that the self-assessment and a manager assessment is really the starting point of the conversation between the manager and the employee. The goal really is to have that logged in Bob so we can see how the employee is assessing themselves and what they're reflecting on. And exactly, Amanda, like you've said, what the manager is thinking as well, and then enabling them to start a discussion around that, and then taking that as a starting point to be like, okay, cool, this is everything that we discussed. Now, how can we actually start implementing all of that along the way as well? Amazing. So a question to you all now. What are some of your tips for writing a self-assessment performance evaluation?
My big tip is to let people not just assess the areas where they need to improve or the areas where they fell short, but also give themselves a pat on the back. Figuring out where people feel like they excelled or they're doing a great job can really give you insight to the work they're passionate about, the places they want to grow, and where you can give support with professional development, or you can create goals that match up to those things that they're really excelling at. And honestly, sometimes as a manager, I miss those little successes. I have a lot going on and I feel really bad when I do, but sometimes I miss those assessments. So by asking people to like give themselves a pat on the back, it brings things to my attention so I can look for them in the future.
Kevin, I think it would be great to hear some of your insights as well on this one.
Yeah, I think that it's important to understand that when a self-assessment, you don't have to follow normal social rules where you might be encouraged to be a little self-deprecating or humble. It's okay to brag a little bit. It's okay to actually talk about the things that you've done and you've done well. I think that perspective shift also about going from not bad to good, but good to great, really aiming toward what does excellence look like and what's your vision for your career and how do you see the developmental opportunities that you want to have access to? How do those line up with the needs of the organization and enable you to help those strategic goals move even farther? So if there's a skill that you can learn, if there's something that you can bring to bear that connects back to those organizational priorities, how do you connect that back to your performance and then make that conceptual link back to your developmental plan so you can get exposure to those different experiences? I also think being your own worst critic in a way can be very disarming and make it so that you have really, really great conversations about not only those blind spots, but those hidden talents where you might actually be doing exceptionally well in the eyes of your manager or in the eyes of your peers, but you might just be a bit too hard on yourself and not being afraid to bring out that critical element of your own performance into that self-assessment, because it's going to open up a really rich conversation about where those gaps in perception might be.
Yeah, it's so true, so true. Okay, so shifting gears slightly and focusing on the managers. What role do the managers play in defining and supporting the employees' career development?
I can start out here. This is probably where I have the most experience. So I think it comes down to two things. It's advocacy and it's honesty and transparency. So maybe three. So, and I'm saying advocacy because are you advocating for a career path for your team? Are you creating an organizational chart that allows for mobility? Are you tiering the team in a way that allows people to advance? Maybe they want to become a manager and you know that you have to grow the team. And then the key piece is that knowing that person wants to advance, take over more responsibilities, possibly be a manager, how can you help them get there? And maybe it's not on your team. Maybe you manage, we keep going back to that support role. Maybe you manage a support team and you know that so-and-so on the team really wants to go into PR and that position is going to be opening up. Encourage them to go. Sometimes it's hard to lose that person. We all know that. But encouraging people to grow within the organization it's going to benefit the organization as a whole, which will benefit your team. But I really do think it's about keeping an honest communication with your team, hearing what they want, and then advocating for what they want to see if you can help facilitate that growth. Sometimes I know that's a lot easier said than done. But it is an important team building tactic. And frankly, it helps with retention of your team when they know that you're going to bat for them too. I
love what you said about encouraging them to grow and encouraging them to go. I think it can be almost kind of counterintuitive. I was coaching an executive leader who had a lot of turnover on their team, and the shift in the conversation around talking about each team member's next step, the more you talked about their next step and encouraged them to go and grow, it was really counterintuitive because they ended up retaining and staying longer. And sometimes that's a difficult mindset shift to have people have. But when you signed up to be a manager, you signed up to be a career coach. You might not have realized that when you took the job, but part of what you're doing is helping people figure out what their next step is and helping them make the connection between that next step and the work that they're doing on a day in and day out basis. I was working with a branch manager for a bank who saw a lot of his tellers and bankers that started in the bank when they were pursuing their bachelor's degrees. And then once they would get their bachelor's degree, they would leave the organization and they would leave the bank branch. But what this person understood or began to understand was that when you talk to them about what are you getting that degree in, what do you want to do? Or you're getting it in marketing. Oh, okay. Well, as a result of the degree in marketing, what do you want to do with that? Oh, okay. Well, how can we connect a future marketing role to what you're doing as a banker? How can we connect the way that you're selling accounts and the way that you're selling different opportunities to this ultimate career path that you want to pursue? And the more that you can articulate that connective tissue between the day in and day out work that they're already doing and the path that they want to go on, they're going to see value in that role and they're going to be much more likely to stay.
Kevin, I've described myself as a emotional support manager before, but I really like career coach as a better title. And just to jump in on this, I've told my staff before that it doesn't matter what the job pays or what the hours are like, what the culture is like. If you're in a job that doesn't want to help you grow, it's a bad job. And it's ultimately bad for the company because keeping people stuck gives you resentful employees that are looking to check out eventually. So by encouraging growth, by encouraging people to take steps up or out, you're going to have happier employees in the level that they are currently.
Yeah, I mean, especially even with the out part, right? Sometimes you can become known as a place that really develops people to go on to great opportunities. You know, in a previous work life, I worked in talent acquisition and I worked for a couple of agencies. And everybody knew you worked for the agency for a couple of years, and then you went in-house at Google or Twitter or Facebook or wherever and it was just part of the career path. Either you moved into management or you went to a great internal position at a brand name company.
And that's not a bad thing. That's called networking. That means that you and your company have like happy people that you can call on, that you can talk to all over the place.
Totally. Especially if they go into being in a position where they end up being a buyer for your services at the company.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool. So jumping to our next question, which I think you're starting to touch on already, you're getting ahead of the slides. Why is internal mobility important to retain talent? We're speaking about growing and letting go and retaining at the same time. So what do you think for you is, I guess, the most important thing about that?
Well, you know, I've done a lot of work with employee engagement data and people analytics data. And what I consistently see is that one of the biggest drivers of retention is employees' perception of whether they have great career opportunities. And one of the biggest linkages that you can see between that perception of career opportunities is something that we call the honeymoon effect. Newer employees feel better about their career opportunities than people that have been there for a while. But you see that honeymoon effect get reignited when people move around, either when they get promoted or they go to another role, even if it's a lateral move. So one cybersecurity company that I was working with really recently had this really interesting finding. So people with less than a year tenure had almost 90% of them feel like they had great career opportunities. But that number dropped to 75% when they had been there for around 2 years. And then it dropped to like 1 in 7 or 1 in 6 when they hit the 4 to 6 year range. However, you take that least engaged group, that people that were in the 4 to 6 year range, and you give them a new internal career opportunity, and they go right back up to the 90%. It's like the honeymoon effect has kicked in all over again. And catch this, this was even true and an even bigger bump for internal mobility at a lateral move than it was for promotion. So a lot of times people feel like internal mobility is all about moving up, but it could also be about moving side to side. And in many instances, there's an even bigger bump in engagement and retention when that happens, if it helps people get into a path that they really want to be on.
Wow, that's such good insight. More than you would expect as well. I think we're coming up. I want to make sure we have some time to go through some of the ones that are coming through the Q&A. So we've got one more question here for now. For you, how do performance evaluations and reviews enhance the employee experience?
So I'm going to start. This is a controversial statement, at least for people who have to go through employee reviews and performance evaluations. I think having one performance evaluation a year is far too few. They're really stressful. You're trying to take a your amount of work and behaviors and growth and learning and goals, and to cram it into like an hour meeting. It's too stressful. You can't touch everything. It's not going to be a successful conversation. I like having performance evaluations at least 4 times a year. And then those mini check-ins. I love that, Amanda, that you're doing weekly check-ins and weekly kind of like touch bases to get that employee temperature all the time. I think nothing is harmed by having more conversations. They become less stressful. They become better conversations when we're used to having them.
Yeah, I can't agree. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
That's okay. I just was going to say, I can't agree more with what Bryce said. You know, I did mention earlier in the call that we do them weekly. We have software that does weekly quick check-ins. So that's great to keep your temperature check. But it's even with that, to do an annual review, let's say they're in December, to think back of the projects that you did in January is almost next to impossible. And like, let's use 2020 for an example. Reevaluating 2020 when January started off normal and the world fell apart in March. So when you look at such an extreme situation, it's hard to really keep a performance check-in annually and think it's really getting the job done. So.
I love that. I'm going to use a sports analogy, even though I don't actually watch sports and I tend to do them really poorly. But it's sort of like if the coach only evaluated whether or not you won the championship at the end of the year, and they didn't have that ongoing conversation, play after play, game after game, to review how well people were doing. So we would never think about that in other contexts, but for some reason, when it comes to employee development, we think we can do that once a year. And you know, if you think about the way that people approach performance in other areas of their life, they love being evaluated, right? Like people hire public speaking coaches, they hire golf coaches, they hire musical coaches, they get voice lessons. So they really do want to improve. And there is that relationship between a great employee experience and great performance. When people perform better, they think more highly of their employee experience. And when they think highly of their employee experience, they perform better. So I think one of the big questions that we have to ask around performance evaluations are they actually improving people's performance? Because if they are, it's going to improve their employee experience and it's going to have a really positive spiral.
Yeah, definitely. So good to start with asking those questions and thinking, what do you actually really want to get out of it, right? Cool, amazing. Thank you so much, panel. So we've got questions coming through the Q&A, which I'd love to pose to you all from our audience today. So I'm going to dive straight in with one here. We've got, how are you measuring the success of mobility within an organization? There's actually a couple of questions in this one. So how are you measuring the success, and how are you engaging with the employees that have made career changes or been promoted? So like, maybe let's talk a little bit around the data side of things.
So one of the things that I found really helpful is to have an ongoing employee feedback system where you're asking people about their turnover intentions, you're asking them about how motivated they are in the role, about whether or not they would recommend the organization as a great place to work, and then thinking about the different factors that might be driving that. And then having the demographic data where you're tracking whether or not somebody was promoted or whether or not somebody moved into a different internal role, and then laying that data on top of each other. So you can see, okay, people that got a promotion versus people that didn't get a promotion, are they intending to stay? Are they saying great things about the organization? And then that can help you, well, it can give you insights into what that looks like, first of all, but it can also help you make the case for internal mobility within your organization and translate that into business results that the rest of your stakeholders will really care about.
Yeah, I love that. It's good to, I think that's such an amazing insight to actually kind of include the employees in that and be asking them those kind of direct questions, like, where's your mind at on this as well? We've got another question here as well about how we can help recruiters and hiring managers to see employees internally in the organization that actually might have the skills that they're looking for different roles in the organization.
So for our staff, we created what I called the Tinder survey for current staff. I've been married for like 15 years. I don't know what Tinder is anymore, but I wanted to make it cool for my younger staff members. And what this was actually like an internal survey. What areas are they passionate about? What areas would they like to contribute to growth in? Again, what kind of crazy secret talents do they have? Where are those likes, interest, dislikes? And then as opportunities that come up in the company, we have this like cool, kind of fun data that we can pull on and see if we have an internal match for things.
Wow, I love this. Tinder for the workplace.
I 100% got mocked so many times for having a Tinder survey, for calling it the Tinder survey.
I love that, Bryce. That's amazing. I was going to answer this with like a much simpler approach, but the Tinder approach is much cooler. I think if you just, the question, of how to open it up to internal employees first. So email the employees that we're looking for a new marketing manager or whatever it might be. It will be open to internal employees for 2 weeks before we open it publicly. Because it is hard to keep track of the evolving skill set of your employees, especially as your organization grows. But allowing them to be the first to apply and get preference for that is always going to show who's raising their hand, who's eager for movement. And it does go back to the culture of that too, that, if somebody on my team applies for that marketing job, I have to be tough and I can't be offended by that. I have to know that that's something that they want to do and that they want to evolve and grow into. And then another part of this question was the skills needed for the possible job. Again, it goes back to that job description. Put the skill set in there, especially if that's how you're going to advertise it. Externally, advertise it internally in the same way, because the skill set, in theory, should be the exact same.
Yeah, this idea of advertising them internally first as well, I think definitely feeds into so much that you've all been talking about how to have that growth mindset in the organization as well, like prioritizing internal candidates first, perhaps. I'm conscious of time. We're coming to the hour, so I think we've probably got time for one more question. And I know we're probably all been talking about it a very long time, but it probably wouldn't be right to finish without a COVID-related question. So for all of you, anyone who wants to take this one, what are your thoughts on increasing engagement and retention levels in a COVID world? Perhaps we've had talented individuals who are furloughed or have had to the nature of their job change throughout the last year. So how do you think organizations can tackle those kind of cases?
I don't know if this connects 100% with the question, but during my time at Google, I was doing talent acquisition, and they have a very interesting way of approaching talent in that they just want good people. So my mandate was to find the top 5% of software engineers on the planet, regardless of where they were working or what they wanted to do. And then they would find a job for that person. Once they discovered that person, they would try and figure out where they fit. So I think if people are having success after having been furloughed, and that person is just a high quality individual that can provide value to your organization, maybe not necessarily start with the job and then try and find that person, but really connect with that person and figure out how and where that person might be able to fit within your organization.
Wow, I love that, like a totally reverse approach that could be something interesting for many organizations. Cool. Well, I think we're just about at time. So again, would love to say a huge thank you to all of you joining our panel. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experience with us. If we missed any of your questions, to everyone who's listening this afternoon, if we missed any of your questions, we would love to get back to you with the answers from our panel as soon as possible. If you want any more information on Bob, you have a button on your screen there for some more information with us as well. So yeah, once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully there was many nuggets of information to take away with you there. And thank you again, panel. It was great to hear with you. Everyone here today, you'll get a follow-up email a bit later on with the recording of the session. So you can catch it again or share it on as well. So thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are, and hopefully we'll see you at another webinar soon.